Hey, it's Aaron, the Metal Theologian. Kind of been a while. I was out of town for a few days and shit, but that's how it goes. You know, it's funny. I like to put these fucking funny videos on in the background, and generally speaking, like, I mean, this is like the default, right? Just like one of these Christian, like, anti-rock ones. This is about, like, exposing, like, the satanic music industry or something like that. But, yeah, there's one that looked really promising. It was about the Masons, and I queued that up, and it was just like a fucking picture. I was just sitting there, and like someone's hand like was pointing to shit. And I'm like, dude, that's lame. That's not like, you want some entertainment out of that kind of shit. I might have mentioned this last time. I listen to fucking Two Way Army a lot, man. I've been so into this fucking record. And it's funny because I actually checked this out because I've been really sort of like interested in like that whole electronic thing that was going on, right? And I always kind of respected Gary Newman, at least since I've been old enough to appreciate what he was doing. But I was never like into it. So I checked this out and I was actually expecting to be a lot more electronic than it was, I mean, this is really, there's some like weird like dated electronics in it, which is what I was going. So it does deliver on that front, but it's a lot more of like a rock album and the songs are really good, man. I've just been playing it over and over. As far as like the way, sort of the tone of this thing, I keep wanting to like reach for like the Punishment of Luxury record as like sort of something similar because it's hard to like match these sorts of sounds. Just put the headspace app in and I'll get to that. But the Punishment of Luxury one is like it's a little too bouncy and a little too goofy for what I'm into lately. And it's funny because this one like hits that just right. Because I mean this is kind of funny, this record. I mean, first of all, Gary Newman is kind of funny, right? I mean that's pretty funny. And like the way he sounds is kind of funny too. But like Steel and You, that's a great song title. Or I mean a lot of these, My Love is a Liquid. You can't argue with that. Anyway, yeah, lots of Two-Way Army these days, but it's funny because I've been listening to a lot of records, and this video is kind of dedicated to Eric Bauer because he's had some of these suggestions, but like I've been listening to like a lot of goth shit. Which is kind of a big deal because, like, historically, I've kind of had beef with goth to a certain degree. I never really bought what they were selling back in the day, and I just kind of continued to think it was corny. Never really minding the fact that it didn't make a lick of sense for me to like be down on goth for being corny when I'm totally down with a band like Manowar. So anyway, I mean, I don't know if I sort of semi-realized that or what, but like just with sort of like the sort of like punk adjacent, like post-punk and sort of especially electronic, but not necessarily shit I've been listening to. Some of the shit's been scratching the itch really well. Like, I've really been digging this record a lot. This is not the first copy of this record I bought, but I've been all over it, And, like, this isn't the best Stranglers record. This isn't goth either. But I listened to this earlier today, too, and it was pretty great. Actually, my kid came in the room while I was listening to it and was like, this guy's accent is really extreme. I don't remember what song it was, but he was, like, totally hamming it up on that specific song, and it was totally true, But yeah, it's funny. This is the one that you wish would be cool because it has like this awesome looking vinyl. This is like 79 or something, this record maybe? 78. You didn't usually see this, but this is the sort of black and white thing, going with the theme of the album, which itself is a little bit corny. Anyway, it's like with the goth thing, it's like I haven't been listening to goth because it's goth, but I've been finding that a lot of shit that I'm otherwise liking, the fact that it also is goth is not bothering me, if that makes sense. So like the Joy Division record, like the gothy thing sort of gives it a tone that I like, right? And it's not like, I don't know, man, maybe it's just that he fucking, I haven't been paying any attention to the words or whatever, but like, this record is kind of, there's a certain like sort of anarchism to the writing, you know what I mean? Like the way the bass lines are written, like on the very first song, which I don't even know the fucking song titles on this. I mean, She's Lost Control is another one though, since that's one where I recognize the name. Yeah, Disorder, I guess is what I was thinking about. It's just, they're really simple songs, but like, it'll be like a really basic chord progression, but the, bass part will be written in like this sort of bouncy way where it sort of jumps across octaves and that, and it gives it a really weird sort of disjointed feeling, even though the songs aren't really all that bizarre. And like I appreciate that a lot about this record, I listen to Bauhaus too, Fucking, what can I say about Bauhaus? I don't know, it's not like I know about this shit, All right, here are a couple newer ones though that I might actually have something to say about. I got, let me hype this one real quick too. This is a weird record, man. I got this from the Stoner thing when I was on the Stoner thing, because this is an Interstellar Smoke record. But I've kind of kept it out because this is a hard one for me to classify too. Like, it kind of has a stoner thing going in that it's a stoner band, and like the time, like it sort of has that desert thing going. But there's a grandiosity to this record, and it actually reminds me of something. I keep playing this record because I can't put my finger on what it is. But anyway, yeah, Brno. I think they're Polish. No, they're Italian. Wait a minute. No, they're fucking from Argentina. If I keep guessing, if I cycle through enough countries, I'll get it eventually, right? No, but this is the giveaway here. This is the same fucking guy where I like all his bands. In fact, I think that's why I bought this in the first place. Like the dude from Los Natas and Ararat, and like, I think he's an ambassador too, but I'm not even sure at this point. But this Sergio guy, pretty much anything he's into, I'll want to check out myself. The label's Polish though, and there are a couple Italian names on here too, so I don't know what the relationship is, but it's probably an Argentine band. Anyway, it's a record, like, you don't necessarily, at least for me, man, I don't think of like, desert rock or stoner rock as being grandiose and sort of epic, you know what I mean? But there's something, majestic about this fucking record. It's really distinctive because of that. And the funny thing is, it took me a few listens to even decide I liked it, because like, it's almost like AOR. There's a thing. It's grandiose in like an AOR kind of way on a fucking stoner rock record. So yeah, it's something to hear, man. I'll bet I just talked somebody into buying this and they're gonna hate it. I'm thinking of Louis Golden, but we'll see. Alright, so here's another one Eric put me on to. It's fucking Sex Gang Children. I think it's their first full length. There are a couple singles before this, Yeah, and I really dug this, man. It has the weirdness in the sound. I'm actually going to fire it up for a minute because it might be a little easier to talk about some of this shit. That's actually a big part of why. Something I play down, I was out of town for a few days and shit, but I was listening to shit and I didn't know what to say about it. One thing about my channel is I'm not going to sit here and tell you, who's in a band and shit. Like, if I don't feel like I have something original to say about a record, I'd rather not just talk about it, Maybe that'd be a topic for a video someday, is like records that I pulled out and listened to and decided to put away without talking about it because I didn't have anything to say to them, even though maybe I'll even like them a lot, like, here's another one, man. The Virgin Prunes, another one Eric put me onto. And I'll tell you, man, I had to get over myself a little bit to buy a record by a band called the fucking Virgin Prunes. Jesus Christ. Like bands called the Virgin Prunes is a big part of why I stayed away from that kind of shit for so many years, you know what I mean? So that's really sort of sucking it up. There's another one he suggested. Oh, the March Violets, dude. Dude, the March Violets. Eric's been telling me that the March Violets are fucking great, but I swear to Christ, dude, those guys always look like the most lame fucking Sisters knockoffs. And given that, like, the Sisterhood record was already pretty shitty, and, like, the Mission UK, they were pretty shitty, too. It was like, Sisters of Mercy knockoffs is not a good sign. And so when the Virgin Prunes, like, the fucking March Violets, be on the label and shit, I was like, dude, come on, man, So I have a little bit more getting over myself to check that out, is what I'm saying, you know what I mean? Because there's, like, this line, and it's like, each one of these bands that I've been shown so far kind of represents a certain psychological barrier I've had to break, you know what I mean? Like, I got this record just like last week because it felt like a big deal to me to want to listen to a Cop Shoot Cop record. And actually, this record didn't really scratch the itch. It sounded kind of ordinary. I don't even like Clutch, and I'm not like a big Clutch fan. Like, because Clutch kind of reminds me of Mastodon, and like what I don't like about Mastodon. Like, there's this whole sort of, and actually, it's not all dissimilar from like Faith No More or Mr. Bungle from that matter too. There's a certain sort of try-hard thing about a lot of these bands. And the bands I just rattled off do it in different ways, right? These guys don't sound like Faith No More. They do kind of sound like Clutch. And in both cases, I feel like there's sort of a try-hard thing that kind of puts me off a little bit. So, I don't know. I didn't hate it. Like, if I went to your house and you put this on, I would totally enjoy it, It's just, am I ever going to reach for it again? Maybe not. Didn't really scratch the itch. But it's the same deal, like, Cop Shoot Cop was one of those bands I was like, oh, fuck, I don't even remember why, dude, because I was like 19 or whatever. Whatever reason I had for not being interested in Cop Shoot Cop probably had to do with either the fact that, either nothing. It probably was about the fact that, like, as a teenager or whatever, I didn't have all the money in the world to spend on shit. Like, as a grown-up now, like an adult, I can spend more money on records, right? So when I was a kid and having to economize, I had to rationalize why I didn't really want that one that I couldn't afford anyway, right? That's probably what a lot of this shit really boils down to, looking back on myself in retrospect. But I did also tend to be judgmental, so whatever. Anyway, Sex Gang Children, man. I really like the punky feel to this, and the singer, like, you know what's funny? Yeah, it's sort of like a David Thomas style in a way, but David Thomas is annoying and this guy isn't. Like, this guy kind of does that shrieky sort of waily thing that's kind of goofy. But it's just fine, and it complements the music, you know what I mean? I kind of like the way the backing vocals feel like they're sort of thrown in. They're just sort of like this little bit of like, these kind of, it's like they had these ideas of little things to throw in, and they were like, all right, let's just pop it in there, you know what I mean? And that's kind of the pattern, you know? In fact, you know who this kind of reminds me of more than anything? Actually, this is one I was thinking about putting on. Fuck it, I'm just going to, but because I really don't know what to say about these guys, man. But this Savage Republic record, I can actually tell you why I had a problem with Savage Republic, why I never really gave them a chance. Because I always confuse them with the Savage Garden. And I know they sound very different. But I always confuse them in my head with Savage Garden. The Savage Garden kind of sucked. Like, it's sort of one of those bands that, like, new collectors get into. It's like, they sort of, like, they get past, like, the Stones and the Beatles and the Zeppelin and the Floyd. And they sort of go to the next level, and they find bands like that. That's like when they find bands like Gentle Giant, too. And they go, ooh, cool, but it's actually shit, you know? It's just sort of, you know, the novelty of paucity or something like that, you know? You don't know a lot, and so everything sounds... And, you know, that's fine, too. You know, I'm also spending this whole fucking video talking about bands where I had some dumb reason, or maybe even a good reason to not be interested in them, and all of a sudden I'm liking them, you know? It's kind of a big part of what this channel's been about, which is funny, because I didn't plan it that way when I started this shit. Anyway, Savage Republic. For some reason, I always confuse Savage Garden and Savage Republic. I never confuse the Savage Resurrection with either band, though, so go figure. Savage Garden, not that great. Not terrible, but not that... I mean, they're about as good as Gentle Giant. Maybe a little bit better than Gentle Giant, but not terrible, just like Gentle Giant. But this fucking record is awesome, man. Like, normally I don't like these fucking double sets, but it's like an early, like, EP or something, and it's just as fucking good as the LP, and I'm all in, man. And this thing is fucking great. And it's like, it has all this weird percussive shit going on, you know what I mean? It's like some of the shit Einstürzen and Neubauten was doing, but it's not like, but the whole sound isn't built around it, you know what I mean? You could play the song without that. You could do that with the hi-hat. It's just cooler with this. Fuck, for all I know, there's a hi-hat with some shit setting on it. I don't know, whatever the hell it is. You could use a regular hi-hat or something like that. And this record has a lot of those kinds of things in it, and that's what I really dig, man. Like, I'm always interested when a band is really small, okay? Like, trios, I'm always interested in hearing, like ZZ Top, right? That's like the archetype of, like, a trio that, like, just fucking delivers on every front that you would expect a trio to. You know, they're not going to sound like fucking Boston, right? But that's because they're a trio. You don't expect them to have, like, that big sort of pompous. If you do, you're a fucking idiot. And if you bring up Yes, they were doing that shit on purpose. Well, actually, fuck it. What am I saying? Never mind. I was confusing my bands. What was I saying? Look, I got discombobulated fucking mixing up my shit. Alright, well, fuck it. I'll tell a story instead. Now that I've good and lost my train of thought. I was thinking it might be a funny topic. I haven't done this topic before. It would be a funny topic to talk about, like, some of the stories that I heard about Ozzy when I was a little kid. Because, like, I'm sure everyone knows the story. Because here's the thing about Ozzy is, like, a lot of the stories about, like, crazy shit that he did turned out to be true. You know what I mean? Like, when I was a kid and I first heard about him biting a head off a bat on stage, I mean, I think I believed it, but I was also, like, 9, you know? So, I cut myself a lot of slack on that one for having been gullible. But, like, some of these stories I heard, like, even when I was a little kid, I was like, I'm not believing that one. Like, someone told me once that, like at school or something, that Ozzy would, like, have a toilet on stage, and he would have Bibles, and he would, like, shit on these Bibles. Kids said crap. He'd crap on Bibles and flush them down the toilet. And, like, I'm not even sure I was sophisticated enough to like consider the plumbing involved in that setup for a touring band, to just sort of smell that story just didn't really sound very plausible. You know, I was like 10, you know, like 9 or 10 or something, you know. But it's a really funny story. I mean, this is why, you know, I would love to like start an internet rumor. This is like sort of one of my life's goals. Like, I mean, things have gotten so weird with the internet. It's kind of the same. But like in the email days, like when you would like get an email, like remember that email about how like I mean, I heard it two different ways, right? The first time I heard it, it was it was this alarming email about how like you need to like boycott this band Deicide because they're doing this thing where like they get these puppies. No, they get cats and they like tie their feet up so they can't run around, and they throw them in the audience, like in the pit, and then the people tear them apart. And it's just so horrible to these animals and cruel and shit. So you've got to like hold off on Deicide. Well, another time, a few years later, I got an email posted. It was the same story, except it was either, I think it was puppies, and it had been cats the first time, and it was Marilyn Manson. And other than that, it was the same story, you know? But the thing about that is, like, if you, like, if we were, like, having a conversation, and you told me, you, like, mentioned you had gotten that email or something, or, like, the one about the person who, like, woke up in the bathtub full of ice and their kidneys were missing, you know what I mean? I would be really proud if I could say, yeah, that's one of mine. You know what I'm saying? Like, someone wrote that shit. Like, I would be really proud if I, like, made, like, a fucking thing go around the world like that. So, yeah. So, anyway, these stories, you know, and the ones I'm telling today, see, everyone heard about some of them, like, you know, snorting the line of vans and shit, but, like, yeah, these specific ones, I don't know if they've traveled quite as far, so I'll be interested whether some of y'all heard these or not. Another one I heard about Ozzy was that he would have a sheep on stage and blow it up with dynamite. Like, I imagine, like, one of those TNT things, like, in the cartoons, you know, and there's just fucking sheep standing there, you know, like my fucking 10-year-old brain. So, that was a good story. Okay, so going back to the sparse bands thing, though. Like, one reason I really like Way Out West by Sonny Rollins is because it's a three-piece, right? And it's just the bass, the drums, and the sax. And, like, when you have all that space in there, you have to work with it, you know what I mean? Like, ZZ Top, that's like a clear, like, model or something like that. And, like, a piano trio in jazz is sort of the same way, too, you know what I mean? Like, piano, bass, drums. That's kind of like, it's a, I don't want to say a stable unit, because that's not what I mean, but it's a known commodity as a unit, you know what I mean? Like, you're working within an established paradigm, and so is ZZ Top, right? But like sax, bass, and drums, you're kind of not so much. And these guys, when they're doing that other weird shit, they're kind of not too. You know what I mean? Now, this is probably a more full band. I think there were at least like 4 guys in this band. I don't know anything about them, but I think I saw a picture with at least 4 of them. So, but the point is that like when there's all this space in these sounds like that, that tends to pique my interest. You know what I mean? These tend to be bands that I like a lot. So I've been listening to a lot of fucking. I almost said Savage Resurrection. Savage Republic. Fucking Savage Republic. They're really fucking good. Maybe I should put an advisory on this. There's a lot of swearing in it. I've been playing that so much, you know, I've been playing a lot is this fucking record, man. Look at the story, like, a little apologetic about the fact that it's a boot, because I guess these tapes, like, aren't available officially, but I'm like, fucking give it over, you know? That's fucking great, man. I've listened to a ton of Death Grips. Been all over fucking Death Grips. I was stoked about the new Giobia, actually. To go back to a newer band, these Italians that I was fucking hyping real hard before. I still think Giobia is fucking great, okay? And like that other video Mary made where I was talking about how that fucking record with the pink cover was the greatest thing I had heard that month. I stand by every word. I didn't like this one quite as much, even though I like the cover more. And you know why? It's because it's only a great record. So I kind of feel bad about, like, dinging them at all for that. Like, they're victims of their own success on that other fucking one. Which I wish I could remember the name of. I mean, this is a great record. I really enjoy this record. I've played it a few times. I'm going to play it a few more. And I'm not listening to a lot of this kind of shit. Like, this sort of modern, like, stoner shit, you know? So, I mean, I do love Giobia, and I recommend this record. But if you don't have that one, it's the one with, like, the weird, like, pink and, or red and blue stripes on it and the Ganesh in the middle. Yeah, like this is so simple. You know, and this is actually like that Sonny Rollins thing because there's an instrument playing chords, you know? Like the bass is kind of outlining the chords. But it's sort of being handled like three solo instruments in the same way the Sonny Rollins trio. So yeah, there you go, man. You know, another really good example of that shit in jazz is that Jimmy Geoffrey record, Free Fall, done with Steve Swallow and Paul Bley. For different reasons, but that's a great, like, really sparse record too. You know, I mean, there's one more story. Oh yeah, here I made my fucking notes so I wouldn't forget a story on the spot. Oh yeah, I forgot. This is the best one. I think this is the first one I ever heard. Someone told me once when I was a little kid that like Ozzy at shows, he would like pass a cup around and everyone would spit in it, and then he would drink it. Now, frankly, I believe that Ozzy could do that, or would have done that. You know what I mean? That's probably the least implausible, except for the fact that there's an audience involved. You know? That's so funny. The satanic shit. It's all about the satanic shit over here on the fucking Metal Theologian channel. God damn it. Here's another interesting one that I wish I liked more than I did, actually. This is one I think I told Eric about. This is pretty much total goth. And that's kind of why it bummed me out a little bit, because this is kind of a cool, like, nobody band. These guys just made this EP in a 45. And they're from Cleveland. This is on St. Valentine Records, which is the same as, what the fuck was it? There's another St. Valentine. Oh, that Venus Envy record I showed recently was also on St. Valentine's. It was pretty well known, at least around town, to just be a P.O. box that bands would share to, like, sort of look like they were on a label. You know, I was never deep enough in it to know any details, but that was what I heard, you know. So anyway, St. Valentine's means that's a Cleveland band with some credibility, you know what I mean? Anyway, this record is good. You know, the songs are good. It's like as far as goth goes, but it's just it's funny because this is like kind of straight goth thing that just didn't really do anything for me. Like it didn't have that sort of extra something about it that sort of made me look past what just sounded like ordinary goth shit and kind of bored me. So I really wanted to like Shadow of Fear, man. Especially because it's really cool to find a record you've had sitting in your collection for decades. I mean, I got this because it was like really cheap. I even had their 45 too, where they do a cover of In the Flesh and like I don't remember if it's Jailhouse Rock or Hound Dog, but some equally like poorly chosen cover. You know what's funny though? I'm pretty sure that Shadow of Fear record sent me back a quarter, and I'm pretty sure I got it out of the same quarter bin as I got my Saber record from. So go figure. Here's one I played a couple times, not much to say about. Great example. I wish I had a whole bunch of great things to say about Ultravox, but I don't. I was hoping this record would be something that it's not. I don't really have a lot to say about what it is. So there you go, there's one example of that kind of shit, right? Here, if you watch all the way to the end, I'll show you one other funny thing real quick. So, I was working at this job at the B of A building, like in the early 2000s. It was so long ago, it was even before I started my YouTube channel. And it was the Bank of America building, right? Which is kind of funny. We were like on the second floor, right? It was a startup. That's a whole story. But anyway, I was in there with a couple other people. We were getting badges, right, from the company that does them. And like we were sort of fucking around and hanging out, with the person who's taking the pictures too. And like, so it was my turn. I was sitting there, right? And like right when they clicked the picture, I like bust out laughing. And this was the picture that ended up coming out. I covered up my last name with the post-it. There's no like, that's just the bottom of the badge. But like, yeah, like so that was just like completely like an accident. Like she would click it right when I was going you know. So and she was like, oh, do you want me to retake it? And I was like, oh no, that's fine. So yeah, and then like you had to scan your badge when you went in the building, and it was one of those things where your picture comes up real big on the thing. So every so often when like one of the security people is paying attention, I get a little chuckle. I think I worked there for about a year in that building, but it's kind of weird to be in there, but whatever. It's San Francisco, man. Alright, that's about all I've got for today, man. Thanks for watching. Always a pleasure. One of these days I'm going to show off the tripod here. That would be good lore. I should do that one of these days. The homemade one that actually is like really fucking great. I joke about it occasionally, but it's actually a really good tripod that I have here. Okay, thanks for... Now I feel like I've teased it. Fucking let's just do this real quick. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off without like trying to like adjusting the camera and shit. So check this shit out. So this thing is basically like a tripod for a like a telescope that Spencer modified. This is my older kid, the one who just graduated from school, which is why I was out of town. So on the top thing, he built this rig though out of wood, so you could put a camera on it, right? Now, if you look at this, there's a wing nut here, so you can rotate it from side to side. There's a thing here where there's like, you see, that's where the phone rests, is inside those, there's a name for it, I can't remember what it's called. Inside those slots, in any sense. And you can adjust that as tight as you want with these wing nuts. Usually I do it really loose, but you know. And then on the side here, there's another wing nut, so if I wanted to go like forwards and backwards, you can do that, if you can see that, right there. So you have all this, and you have this thing, and the camera actually does that. So I can cover like any angle, you know what I mean? That's hilarious because it's like this thing my kid made when he was like 13 or something for, you know, some project he did and finished, and then years later, a couple years later, I was like, hey, I'm going to use that thing, and he was like, okay. And years later, here we are, right? All right, anyway, there you go. That's your lore for today, man. Thanks for watching. See you next time.